We came to Amsterdam rather late in February 1940, and we moved to a square in Amsterdam, the Middenplein, and there were some other refugees there, and in apartments, of course, you have no garden where you can play, so the children played in the street. And so one day a little girl came to me and introduced herself. She was very polite and said, "My name is Anne Frank, and her family comes from Germany." And so she took me up to her apartment to meet her father, Otto, who later became my stepfather. And we were both 11 years old, and we knew each other for 2 years, playing together, gossiping together, and so on, till both our families went into hiding.
Yes, went into hiding, and of course, in the end, both betrayed and ended up in Auschwitz. But of course, I just wonder whether you had any inkling of what was happening to the Frank family. I guess you didn't at all.
No, we didn't talk about it or our plans. And Otto actually left notes behind in the house that said escape to Switzerland, because they didn't want Nazis to look for them. And they did, you know, because many people, many families disappeared, and the Nazis really wanted to catch every Jew. So they did house searches, knocked on people's door, people had to open, ordinary Dutch citizens, and they searched their homes, tried to find hidden Jews.
Yes. You lived through Auschwitz. You survived. Anne Frank, of course, did not survive. Just tell me how it was for you in that camp, and then we'll talk about afterwards. But the camp itself and survival, how did you manage it?
Well, I just turned 15, and we used to have a very happy family life in Austria. And I really wanted to live. I wanted to as well get a boyfriend, get married, have a family. So I never ever gave up hope that somehow a miracle would happen, I would make it. And you know, we knew we were there not to get out alive. But you know, human spirit is amazing, and hope is amazing, that you even hope in these terrible circumstances that somehow you will get out of it. And I was really one of the few lucky ones. And what is even more amazing, that my mother survived with me.
She survived, and that brings us to the next extraordinary element of your story, which is that your mother reconnected with Otto Frank, who of course had found his own family decimated in the camp.
That's right.
Reconnected and then ultimately married.
Yes.
Which made you the sort of posthumous half-sister of stepsister of Anne Frank.
Yes.
That must have raised all sorts of incredible feelings within you, because you'd known Anne Frank, she was no more, but here you were now with a relationship with her father.
Well, of course. But of course, you know, they married in 1953, so after 8 years after we came back, and Otto came regularly to our house. I was a very difficult teenager. Teenage is difficult anyway, but I hated everybody, not just the Germans, but the whole world. I was very desperate that I had lost my father and my brother. So we were betrayed by a Dutch nurse who was a double agent. So I was very, very bitter. And Otto was an amazing person. He had lost really his whole family. Said, you know, there are still a lot of wonderful people around, and if you live with hatred, you'll be a miserable person. The people you hate don't know, so it will be only affecting you, really. And go out in the world, put a smile in your face, and you will see life is not that bad. Coming from somebody who had lost everybody, you know?
Well, it's so hard to imagine, frankly, but you have written very honestly about the difficulties after Auschwitz. Yes. You know, many people have written about what happened in the camps very movingly, but you've focused on the real trauma, the difficulties, the psychology of moving on afterwards.
Exactly. Your whole personality was changed through being suppressed by the Nazis. You know, I was 9 years old when the Nazis entered Austria, and already telling you you are just dirt, you are vermin, you're not worth living, and something rubs off on you. I had lost all my confidence, and moved to England, which was after the war, was as well in 51, you know. I was shocked, the devastation which was here, and there was still rationing, and, you know, people tried to find a way again to build up their whole life. And so it was, and in Europe it was complete chaos. And so it was really very, very difficult to connect, to make a new life. And at that time in England, as a foreigner, you were a bloody foreigner. Now it's completely different. Half the population, especially in London, come from abroad. But at that time, you know, I just had to open my mouth and people said, where do you come from? Why are you here? You know.
And you had to rebuild, as you put it, and also come to terms with the rise and rise and rise of this sort of emblematic story, the symbolism of Anne Frank, and the fact that she became such a worldwide figure, intimately connected with your life, but perhaps even overshadowing some of the things you wanted to do.
Exactly. When she started to become famous through her diary, I said, well, I went through the same thing, you know. Nobody knows about me. And as well, my brother was a very, very talented young man. He was not quite 18 when he was killed. And very often my mother said, you know, what about Heinz? Nobody knows about his life. He was just as talented as Anne in different ways, and he painted in hiding because he couldn't make music, and we found the paintings, 30 paintings hidden under the floorboards, and so this was a legacy. Like Otto had the diary, we had his paintings, but you know, he was not known, and so again I felt a bit bitter. Why is all the attention on Anne? But then I realized, you know, I had a life and she didn't. Well, so how can you resent somebody who unfortunately has been killed?